to Wild number 5. I'm so delighted and really super humbled to be welcoming you all to our fall Wild gathering on transformative leadership. And we have so many great examples here, both on the ticket and off. My name is Kelly Klitz. I'm the co-founder of Close Concerns, Diatribe, and DQ&A. Last year, nearly 18 years after the founding of Close Concerns, our first organization in our family of organizations devoted to improving outcomes for people with diabetes and systems around them, our team had an idea to create a network that could bring together women for communal learning, for strengthening further our leadership skills, for connecting with experts across business, science, research, technology, for passing down hard-won advice from outstanding women like so many here in the room, all again to the end of improving patient outcomes. But there is no one path to leadership. I hope this dialogue will inspire each of your unique journeys. I hope this is part of deliberate efforts to keep your tanks full, or to strategically refuel, or to fill up when nearly or even fully empty. I cannot give enough big appreciation to our founding sponsors, Abbott Diabetes Care, Insulet, and Novo Nordisk, for making Wild a reality. So many thanks to our team at Close Concerns for all of their dedication and commitment to developing and growing Wild, and organizing and holding these gatherings, especially new Wild associate lead, Chloe Harris, and Dartmouth Fellows, Valentina Fernandez and Zoe Yang, and especially, and as always, Karen Irwin, event manager extraordinaire, and Rebecca McClure, a new part of our management team here at Close Concerns. Big time thank you to Dr. Fran Kaufman for today. Fran is as great and truly magic a friend as one can ever hope to have or find. Thank you all for being here today and for being in community together. I am in awe of all of you, directors, VPs, board members, clinicians, researchers, and other leaders, other team members who are committed to advancing the field for women, emerging leaders and established leaders. Welcome and thank you for trusting us enough to join us. Tracy Brown gave an explosive opening at our first ever Wild event when she spoke on finding your inner purpose and allowing that to motivate your actions and work every day. And you can go see that talk if you go to closeconcerns.com/wild. Her piercing message still rings true, and we are thrilled to welcome her here on what I've been saying is technically, but in reality as well, her very last day at the helm of the ADA. And what we prefer to think of as kind of her first day as a lifelong goal as CEO Emeritus. Emeritus. Oh, CEO Emeritus, Tracy. Your efforts are just spectacular for all of us to think about. You know, we love how you've driven an even greater investment in diabetes research, as well as in the middle of that, a financial turnaround at the organization. Those are just kind of two critical points right off the bat. It's not surprising at all, having thought about where you were right before ADA. It's kind of lifelong, real volunteer in so many ways to so many different organizations, and especially coming up to ADA when you were serving on the board of directors, and that was just prior to you serving as CEO. You kind of, again, in your spare time, broke the record for the all-time national fundraising record. You've also just led an incredible effort on health equity, which I was already considering that as your legacy 12 months ago when you introduced me to the Race Equity Institute. Then you arranged like 5 minutes later for 14 hours of training for me that weekend. You do things in such a big way, and I was transfixed. And we'll put all those hashtags up, but hashtag health equity now, that campaign really highlights so many health injustices that systemically harm people of color and really work to promote direct action. Policy leaders, fundraising, advocacy, there are so many pieces here to get right. And we know that health equity is very, very changeable. Thank you for leading us on the way on that. And thank you to Abbott, by the way, for the cool $5 million donated recently to that effort, to Medtronic, to Walmart for other 7-figure gifts as well to that. And Tracy, you know, just thank you for helping us go higher. You're a motivator, you're a problem solver, you're creative, just get stuff done. And, you know, you're also who I can call when I'm hurt by something, when I'm sad about something, and then I'll see you, you'll speak to me, speak truth to me, and then I see you on social media, you know, like 60 seconds later, especially if it's the weekend when you're doing a walk or a ride. You inspire even when, maybe especially when no one's watching. So everybody, we have in our presence the first African-American woman to serve as CEO of the ADA, and the second woman ever to serve in this position. She's the first CEO to live with diabetes, the first CEO of the ADA to live with diabetes, and boy, does she. Tracy's a mother, a wife, a leader, and just such a staunch advocate for patients everywhere. Truly, her career embodies and helps inspire the very mission statement of WILD. She's a connector, a mentor, and a friend to established and emerging women leaders alike, all the women team members. So I'm incredibly lucky to know you, Tracy, and to have walked alongside you. Thank you for speaking truth to me so many times. We're so lucky to have you with us today. Your brilliance, your humility, your standout focus. Without further ado, Tracy Brown, everyone.
Wow, Kelly, I don't even know where to start and what to say except for you know, it's just an honor. It's an honor to have served in this role. It's an honor to participate in WILD. And, you know, I do want to start by saying thank you to the WILD team, to the sponsors, to all of the participants, to Kelly, to Fran, to everyone. This has just been incredible. And I'm excited to spend time with all of you this afternoon on, as Kelly has said, my last day as the CEO of the American Diabetes Association. I'm feeling some kind of way today, just so many emotions. This has been an incredible journey. It's been a great honor to lead this great organization. I've met some wonderful people. I've had the opportunity to partner and work with lots of people, lots of organizations, all for the purpose of helping more people living with diabetes thrive. And so for that, I'm grateful. And our collective fights must continue. We must continue to work to realize the mission of the ADA, and that is to prevent and cure diabetes and improve the lives of all people affected by diabetes. We must continue to do this together. And I want to spend just a few minutes talking about some of the things that we've done and some of the things that we're doing together. You know, we started by reinvigorating the ADA brand and really simplifying it, modernizing it, allowing the power that is within 80 years of equity and history. And hopefully everyone will remember this red conversation frame. But the reinvigoration of the brand started with the people living with diabetes. And how we landed on Connected for Life is based on two universal truths. Here's what we know. Everyone either knows, loved, or cared for someone with diabetes. It's just that pervasive. And we also know if we want to go fast, go it alone. If you want to go fast and far, go together. And that is why Connected for Life became our mantra. We doubled down on policy. From the White House, we're bipartisan. We don't care. President Trump, President Biden, we will work with whomever in the fight for people living with diabetes. We've got connections, and we're in the room where policy is being shaped. We're meeting and working with the Department of Health and Human Services, Secretary Becerra, Andrea Palm. We're with CMS, Chiquita Brooks LaShore, CDC, NIH, CMMI. We are there driving forward legislation, policy, laws for people living with diabetes. We're staying true to who we are. You know, 1940, we are about leaning into science and research. That is who we are. It's in our DNA. We're going to continue to work to attract innovative talent to diabetes research. We know that that is critical and crucial. And we're going to focus on continuing to drive impact on improved health outcomes. Our standards of care, scientific sessions, driving the role of technology, expanding cardiorenal protection, understanding the connection between COVID-19 and diabetes. We're going to stay true to that science. And boy, you've heard Kelly talk about health equity now. We are leaning all the way in to health equity now. You all have heard me talk about the startling statistics before. 1 out of 2 people living with diabetes and prediabetes. Every 2 minutes, somebody's dying from diabetes. Every 4 minutes, somebody's losing a limb. Every 10 minutes, somebody's having kidney failure. But if you double click into that further, you will see there's a disproportionate number of people suffering with dying from diabetes that are people of color. African Americans and Hispanics are 50% more likely to have diabetes, 2.3 more times to die from diabetes. And boy, didn't COVID expose a whole lot. 40% of the people who perished from COVID had diabetes, but double click into that again, African Americans, Native Americans, Latinos, Pacific Islanders, all people of color, 2 times more cases, 3 times more deaths. If you're a person of color, COVID-19 and diabetes. So science has improved, medicine has improved, innovation has improved, and diabetes is on the rise for people of color. Are people of color genetically sicker? I think we know the answer to that is of course not. But what does exist are these inequities. The inequities that are in what we say the groundwater, the access or lack thereof, the access, the affordability, the quality. There are so many systemic inequities that we all have a responsibility to dismantle. You know, good health and access to good health care is a human right. And so we've got a collective responsibility. We did step up during the pandemic, again, because of the disproportionate number of people affected by COVID, dying from COVID with diabetes, pushing and securing federal subsidies in the COVID relief packages, continuity of healthcare insurance, testing and tracing, expanding food support, eliminating CGM testing requirements, the 4 times a day requirement to qualify for CGMs, easing a lot of the administrative burdens around supplies, around telehealth, making sure that we fought for type 1 and type 2 equal access to get that vaccine, and of course, continuing to fight for more research dollars. So if we think about where we are right now, this moment where the world is facing so many challenges, pandemics, epidemics, racial inequity, misinformation at scale, distrust of, a lot, lack of connection. I mean, all of these things, attacking basic human rights, global decline in democracies. I mean, there's a lot happening right now. This is a moment like no other. And we cannot solve these kinds of challenges with old thinking. We can't solve them with old models. We can't solve it with old approaches to leadership either. We've got to continue to push and push to disrupt the status quo. And well, you've heard me say this before, this moment requires new kinds of leaders. I believe women are built to lead in this time. Why? Natural crisis navigation skills, we're flexible, we have the capacity, we're connectors, collaborators, we're community builders. We'll put our ego aside. We'll work with people who are different than us. The natural skills of women are needed now more than ever. I believe this is our moment. Now you might say, Tracy, you're biased. Yeah, maybe I am a little biased, but the data also proves this out. So if you don't believe me, believe the data. Harvard Business Review, Pew Research, McKinsey, they've listed these things. We're better communicators. We don't have ego problems. We're well accepted as leaders. We excel at collaboration. We're confident. We motivate others. And if you don't really care about the human side, well, we make organizations more successful. Again, I didn't say it. They said it. 42% higher sales returns when women are at the helm. 66% higher return on investment capital when women are at the helm, and 53% higher return on equity when women are at the helm. We can't go back. We need more women to step up now more than ever, and we need the vision that women bring to the table. And so through my role at the ADA and connecting with every player in the ecosystem, living with diabetes and connecting with others who are living with diabetes, looking at the data, studying culture, looking at the statistics, understanding that science, medicine, and innovation has improved, but diabetes hasn't, got me to thinking, what do we need to do? What are we going to do? And this concept of creating a fourth network was born. And what do I mean about the fourth network? Well, we have some existing networks right now. We got hospitals, we got doctors' offices, we got urgent care centers. And if you think about all three of those networks, they don't necessarily connect with each other. They don't necessarily connect with community. They don't necessarily connect with people. These networks, as we started to think about them, are built for acute care, i.e., you have a heart attack, get to the hospital. You break your arm, go to the doctor's office. You got the flu, go to the urgent care center. They're actually not designed for people living with diabetes or any other chronic disease, for that matter. When you talk about managing diabetes or a chronic disease, we're really talking about behavior change. Behavior change is at the crux of what we need to do, and those three systems don't do that per se. So the fourth network. But to drive this behavior change, it starts with trust. And trust, you have to have some emotional connection. In its simplest terms, what are we talking about? We are talking about people need to be seen, heard, and understood. Do you see me? Do you hear me? Do you understand me? Because if you don't feel heard, seen, or understood, we should never expect people to act. We got to get the trust and the emotional connection. So if we're going to eradicate diabetes, we're saying we need a new network. The fourth network. The fourth network is about community-driven healthcare at its core. Here's what we know. Out of the 6,000 waking hours in a year, most people only spend a handful of those hours in a doctor's office or a hospital, unless you're a healthcare professional and you're working in those spaces. We know that the vast majority of time that people are spending is in their own community. So we started to look at culture and use cultural intelligence to try and think about how could we drive change? And we started to look at culture through the lens of health, healthcare, and community. Looking at about 10,000 cultural signals a day, using machine learning, tagging, categorization, connection modeling. And out of this popped 25 elements of culture that have to do with health, healthcare, and community. And we started thinking about these 25 elements of culture and wrap those up into about 5 cultural themes that we said we need to think about if we're going to start to create this 4th network. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these 25 elements of culture, but I do want you to know that the work was done. The data is real. These are real trends. I'm just going to, hit on a couple of them. Distributed trust, real cultural trend that says people are turning to each other as the trusted source. They're not turning to the establishment. They're looking to their friends, their family, their neighbors, other people. This is real. Blurred responsibility is a real trend, with people saying, who's responsible for my health anyway? Maybe before the days of the internet, before information was such in our face, people might have said, well, maybe it's the doctor's responsibility, or maybe it's my corporation's responsibility because that's where I get health insurance. But more and more people are saying, no, I have a role. I have a role in this. There is a real cultural trend around wellness design. You guys have probably seen it. Products, spaces, experiences designed now for physical and mental well-being and health. Headspace is a great example of this. You saw before COVID, and it's still there now, Headspace being embedded into parks, things like that. That is what wellness design is about. Adaptive design. We used to design to the average person, the average user. But there's nothing average about me. There's nothing average about my diabetes. There's nothing average about Kelly Close's diabetes. You need to design to who we are, and we have the data and tools and technology to do so now. So it's an expectation. So cultural trends around quantified life. People are self-monitoring with all of the proliferation of Fitbits and CGMs and all kinds of data to track what is going on with your body. I know a lot when I walk into the doctor's office about what's going on with my body. People are into this real cultural trend called quantified life. Depersonalization, again, it's an expectation. Don't ask me for data and you're not going to use it. I'm expecting a personalized experience everywhere I go, everything I do. And we live in a now time frame. People want things instantaneously. Do you remember the days where you could get something delivered to you in a week? Then it was 3 days, then it was 2 days, then it was overnight. Now it's like I want it the day I order it is the day that I want it. Other couple that I'll hit on is this notion of frictionless. People want seamless experiences that are easy. Take the friction out of the way for me. And oh, by the way, I also want it snackable. Give it to me in bite-sized pieces. Don't hit me over the head with a big long list of this, that, or the other, or a big old book. I want it frictionless and snackable. And the other one that I'll push on is this trend around warm technology. And I think we saw this in the land of COVID. Technology came to the forefront like no other. Things that we didn't think we could do via technology or virtually, we suddenly started to do. But you still have to have the human aspect to this. People are flocking now. We crave human connection. So how do you merge technology with emotion and some humanness? Again, all real cultural trends. And then finally, in these last set of 5, this trends around taboo toppling. I'm just going to hit this one for a minute. This one is very real to me as I have had conversations with my daughter around marijuana. Now, maybe I'm showing my age, but When I was growing up, I would not in a million years be having a conversation with my mother about marijuana, weed, cannabis, all of these things. But now the taboo part of this has toppled. Wouldn't it be great to topple the stigma that is associated with diabetes? How do we make that happen? Another cultural trend, ageism. And that is just this discrimination and bias against older people. This is, again, a real cultural trend. And when you think about the people living with diabetes, again, a disproportionate number of older people get type 2 diabetes later in life. So when you think about these trends and you think about, well, how do these trends manifest themselves? We see this on display a little bit today in infrastructure, leveraging existing assets, existing infrastructure, or augmenting that infrastructure. We see it in accessibility, trying to make health and healthcare more accessible. And we see it in terms of embedding things into the fabric of the community. So I'm going to just quickly click through these. You know, when you talk about trust, this is real. In California, firehouse clinics, where you're taking firehouses that are in community already, and who doesn't trust the firemen? They're open 24 hours a day, turning those into a place of care for people into the community. It's happening. I think many people are very familiar with the barbershop experience, American College of Cardiology. This was about improving health and blood pressure specifically for African-American males. Well, in the African-American community, a trusted place, a deeply trusted place is the barbershop. So look, they're not turning the barbers into doctors, but they are equipping the barbers to have a conversation about your blood pressure. Again, that's built-in trust. That's using the assets that are already in the community. Accessibility. We have right now happening in Toronto, Google Sidewalk Labs, kind of envisioning future cities, transforming a slice of Toronto's waterfront district into these care collectives. And just think that this is library meets doctor's office meets, coffee shop, but all around your health, your well-being, your connection, right? This is fluid. Your health is a part of who you are. And so they're creating these care collectives to see if this will change the overall health and well-being of people in community. And of course, pharmacies offering health services, the Walgreens of the world, CVS's, Walmart's, everybody is actually trying to go here. Walgreens has over 9,000 retail locations across the country and community. How are we using those? And then my last example I'll use is, this notion of embedding into community, embedding into the fabric. With all of the wearable movement, more and more people now educating themselves and doing it radically. How do we leverage that in community? There's a wonderful example in Middleton, Wisconsin, where they have a large proportion of baby boomers living there. And we all know now this is the largest generation, will be the oldest generation that we have. And helping this community, they wanted to become dementia friendly. And so what did they do? They actually passed a resolution stating we want to become the dementia friendly place, and so took it one step further and educated the businesses in that area, educated the employees that work in the businesses in that area around how to make life better for people living with dementia. Boy, I would love a world where life was made better for people living with diabetes. I travel a lot. pre-COVID. We'll get back to it post-COVID, but there's not very many things set up for people living with diabetes. Now we can figure it all out, where to eat, what to do. When you go to the grocery store, you see all kinds of aisles for other things. Wouldn't it be great to see aisles for people living with diabetes? There's more work we can do. So this fourth network is really around creating community-driven healthcare in a new connected model that combines voluntary healthcare organizations, ADA, the private sector, Walgreens, the public sector, community, with a data and technology-driven platform so that you can deliver more personalized and effective care. So the truth of the matter is, for me, I am still living my purpose. I am moving to Walgreens because I want to make the fourth network a reality. And for me, the good news is it still takes all of us. So I'm still going to be working with everyone because we all have a responsibility to transform the health system that currently exists such that it works for people living with diabetes. It works for people with other chronic diseases. So with that, I'm sure I'm over my 15 minutes, so I'm going to end with simply this. I have been humbled and honored to have been the first Black female CEO living with type 2 diabetes, working for the ADA. And may I not be the last for ADA or any other organization. And I tell you, my time, my life has been enriched and made better by this journey. Thank you to all of you. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Tracy, I'm getting all these texts, fabulous, amazing. What you're doing for us here. We just got to sort of be in class with you, and thank you. Your strength of purpose, your belief, your obvious intellect, your commitment, your ability to take us there with you, frictionless, snackable. We love it. We got our orders. So thank you so much for what we all just got to take with you in that class. We're excited to watch you bring all this transformation to the C-suite at Walgreens, this $40 billion giant, where there's a new place for you right there in the C-suite, in charge of customers. And we all get it, the humanness, the emotion. We know that you're going to bring Walgreens even closer to metabolic health, heart health, kidney health, cognitive health, and the glycemic health that drives all of the success. So along with the fabulous Walgreens CEO, Roz Brewer, your mentor from Walmart, Sam's Place, who it said had to have you there. Roz was just named, everybody, by the way, if you didn't see it, the 6th most powerful woman in business by Fortune magazine 3 days ago. So, onward and upward, and thank you for letting us go there with you. I have the great pleasure of introducing our Superstar panel, which will be broken up into 3 15 minutes or so segments based by different topics. And so the first one is going to feature a discussion on scientific and clinical leadership at the ADA with Dr. Linda Seminario and Dr. Ruth Weinstock. I call them Dr. Seminario and Dr. Weinstock, the great. Then we'll hear from Dr. Cynthia Munoz and Lisa Murdoch on ADA's health equity, advocacy, and policy efforts. I got to meet Lisa through Fran nearly a decade ago. What a powerhouse, and thank you, especially Lisa, for this work here in California. CGM, BGM, heaps of policy wins that are taking us to all those different kinds of health as patients. And in the future as a population here in California. In our third segment, Dr. Sharita Hill-Golden and Dr. Bob Gabay will speak truth on what it's like to be on the ADA board and what it's like to be CSMA, Chief Scientific and Medical Officer, respectively. And Bob, whenever I see you, I think of that day-long meeting, that I got to be in with you at Jocelyn all those years ago. And you just said quietly, and we all kind of leaned in. You just said reduce barriers. And I'm so glad that all of you are here and that there's so many amazing women helping you make that true. And of course, your remarkable board of directors at the ADA. So I'm so grateful to all these leaders for agreeing to be on the panel and for being in this conversation. And as for our leader today in the conversations, Dr. Fancy Kaufman, she's both a personal and professional, enormous inspiration to me. I remember first meeting Fran in Sacramento in the late 90s when she was working to get soda out of schools in California. Went to Sacramento to try to meet her, trying to build my knowledge about soda on the train ride there. It was before I even owned a car. Fran became my friend like that day, and what I've always loved about her and what I've learned from her and Tracy, say yes. Say it in the smartest of ways, but say it. And since that time, Fran, 25 years ago, it would be impossible to even begin to name, like we were trying to do with Tracy, even begin to name, a few of your most important accomplishments, but you're this hands-on pediatric endocrinologist, prior NIH-funded researcher, Children's Hospital LA. You've been at the forefront of the diabetes field, bringing the first closed-loop system to market, Medtronic, and now pioneering advanced glucose monitoring and sensionics. And if we ever have any questions on T1D cure or anything to do with type 2, we pick up the phone. And thank you for calling us back. No less impressive, you've met all these amazing charitable trips to connect individuals, poor countries with insulin, other life-saving care. You notice everything. And you are the most productive person I've ever met.
Can I start? We ready? Thanks.
Hand it off. Take it away.
Okay. All right. I really appreciate that. There's no doubt, Kelly, all of us, particularly me, thank you for putting WILD together, conceiving of it, and really getting us a venue where we can learn and share and maybe most importantly, grow. So, and this is part of it. So today we're going to be discussing a lot about the American Diabetes Association with some of its past and present leaders. And before we get started, I just want to be sure everybody knows that the ADA has a kind of a triumvirate voluntary, and the word is voluntary, although when you're in the midst of it, it seems much more than just voluntary, a leadership network of a president of healthcare and education, a president of medicine and science, and a chair of the board. And we are honored. Our first panel is with Dr. Ruth Weinstock and Dr. Linda Seminario. So let me introduce Ruth first. She is the present ADA president of medicine and science. So she's the fifth woman to do that. And I was lucky enough to be the second in 2003. Ruth is a distinguished services professor and division chief of endocrinology, diabetes, and metabolism at the State University of New York at Syracuse. She is the medical director of the clinical research unit. She runs their Joslin Center. And Ruth has had a number of other roles within the ADA. So in the 1990s, she was on the board of directors. She's received the Outstanding Physician Clinician Award, which is very coveted in 2017. And I'm lucky enough to get to know Ruth over our NIH work on the Today trial. So it was a trial looking at treatment options for youth with type 2 diabetes as that became an epidemic that overtook us all in the pediatric world. And I watched Ruth synthesize, really kind of reduce and solve some of the issues of putting a grant that complicated together. So thank you, Ruth. And now to Linda Seminario, who I've known, I don't know, Linda, I think it's almost 40 years. So, I mean, I hate to say that in public, but it's true. So Linda is a professor of nursing, of health, community systems, and of medicine at the University of Pittsburgh. So she served as ADA president of healthcare and education in 1994. She's received the Outstanding Educator Award, again, incredibly coveted. And last year, she received the Lois Jovanovic Transformative Woman in Diabetes Award, honoring our good friend who passed away, Lois Jovanovic. And I got to know Linda first in the very early 1990s when we were part of a chaperoning effort for the ADA in its Youth Leadership Congress. We would bring two 16 to 21-year-olds from every state to Washington, DC. I can see Lisa smiling, to lobby their members around diabetes funding. And I could tell you, it was a really, at times, harrowing experience taking care of these children who had never perhaps left home, let alone manage their own diabetes. But for the most part, it was incredibly humbling as well as exhilarating, and something that bonded Linda and I together for life. So with that introduction, let's get to some questions for these amazing individuals. And I'm going to start with you, Ruth. So I want to know, and maybe you could share with us why you felt compelled, and maybe, I don't know if compelled the right word or not, to become president of medicine and science in the midst of a global pandemic, and in the midst of some perhaps internal controversy within the ADA, knowing that a pandemic like that would bring on tough choices and new challenges as well as new opportunities. So can you share some of your perspective with us of why?
Well, thanks, Fran. And I really do believe in the importance and in the priorities of and the mission of the American Diabetes Association. And I really wanted to contribute to its success in the future. It was an organization in transition. There was a lot of rapid change going on at the ADA as well as in the world. And I really want to help capitalize on that and try to accelerate positive change, be a uniter, to better help people with diabetes. And being president of Medicine and Science gives one the opportunity to potentially help more people with diabetes by influencing policies and promoting priorities, which we believe are really important to finding the prevention and cure and helping to improve the lives of all people with diabetes. And I knew it would be challenging, and I was not disappointed in that. It has been, but I don't regret the decision in the least. I like to say that the power of the presidency of ADA is the power of persuasion, and that it's really important to try and unite. So ADA is unique in that it has people who are not healthcare professionals, people who are healthcare professionals, and from a wide variety of professions. But we all want to help people with diabetes, and we have to get past some of the really, in the big scheme of things, minor differences and focus on the big issues, which is to help people with diabetes. And I believe we can do that. So having the opportunity to try to inspire people to work together to get more support for research, obviously needed for the prevention and cure, to advocate for that health equity bill of rights, so important for people to have accessible and affordable medications, devices, and supplies, support programs for young people. So we need to fill the pipeline. We need to have the future researchers and healthcare professionals and future CEOs like Tracy, so that, although I think it'd be very hard to be like Tracy, actually, I have to just divert for 1 second and say what an amazing experience it has been for me to work with Tracy, who combined, first of all, to have such a strong woman and capable CEO who combines such impressive business skills with the real desire and ability to do what's right for people with diabetes. And that's been an unforgettable experience. So thank you, Tracy. But, I do think that, we need to, and as president, we advocate for programs that we really think will benefit people with diabetes. And as Tracy mentioned, I believe across the lifespan. So obviously it's extremely important for children and adults. And as some of you know, I've also concentrated on the older adults who I think have been relatively neglected, but have very unique needs as well. We need to really encompass the all, not only for the types of diabetes, the age, the race, the ethnicity, really try to help everyone with diabetes. And it's been a great journey so far. And I'm looking forward to continuing to work as hard as I can to accomplish our goals.
Great. Well, thank you. So, Linda, you've got this lens of time to look back. So what was it like then? I mean, it's, before all this.
Yes.
And what do you think you were able to accomplish in a role? It was a relatively new role when you took it over. And what's been durable over all these years?
Well, I feel very fortunate, Fran, to have come in when I did. For people who don't know, I served with the first woman president of medicine and science. And the role that I did take on was new, and we were great partners together. And what happened when I came in is everything was new. Everything was new. There were two women in leadership. This was traditionally a male-dominated organization and field. And this is true nationally and internationally. So it was about medicine. Quite honestly, medicine then was very prescriptive. So we had what Tracy nicely referred to, or the things we need to pay attention to, is patient-centered, self-management, and access to quality care and community. And those are the things we didn't even talk about whenever I was coming into office. And I had this wonderful opportunity coming in as one of the first diabetes educators in the country, because we didn't think about education. We just told people what to eat and do and live the rest of their lives. And when they had problems, they'll just have to figure it out. And so I had this unique position to, I feel like, influence change. And so as I started as a diabetes educator, seeing kids with diabetes, I got interested in research, and my research over the years, which has gained some attention and momentum and interest, has been about self-management, education, and quality of care. And I know Ruth and I've had connections on getting people access through telehealth opportunities. And so I felt very privileged. And on top of that, I was able to be the first woman who served in a leadership role for the International Diabetes Federation. And that was a really quite unique position, because there were no women in those roles, or let alone a nurse who wanted to focus on areas that were quite different than what we traditionally paid attention to. So very privileged.
And just so everybody puts it in perspective, so you were president in 1994. DCCT came out in 1992. So it was, we had just determined that glucose control really mattered. So it really was the right time. And I do want to say something about Kathy Wishner. We lost her this year. What a loss for all of us. But her last slide on her presidential address started out as a man's footprints crossing the slide, and then it morphed into high heels. And, Kathy's wish was to have many, many more women follow in her footsteps, as she had to follow in only men's footsteps before that. So, all right, Ruth, back to you. So can you tell us a little bit about your presidential address? What were you, it was amazing, but for those who perhaps weren't there, what were you hoping to convey to, I don't know, is it 10,000, 20,000 people who listened to those presidential address?
The presidential address, it was definitely, I felt was my opportunity to reach the largest audience I ever had, or probably ever will reach, and to try to inspire them, to present my vision, the issues with which we are all so passionate, and inspire people to intensify and renew their efforts or join the fight to help us prevent and cure diabetes and improve the lives of all people with diabetes, in whatever way is best for them, whether it is through research or patient care, or advocacy, working to fight inequities, working to fight misinformation. And I also couldn't help but have a segment, as you know, on women and diabetes, and took that opportunity to highlight unconscious bias, because there is so much unconscious bias. And of course, not just gender, but race, ethnicity, obesity, disabilities, mental illness. We could go on and on, religion. There are so many unconscious biases, and to try to have people recognize those biases so that we can provide more equitable opportunities and care for everybody with diabetes. So My goal, and I guess it's always hard to know how much of it you've accomplished, but certainly what I had hoped to accomplish was at least if I could change some minds or open some minds and inspire some people, re-energize some people to join the fight in hopefully multiple ways, but in whatever way they can to help us achieve our goals, and which is really the ADA not to be necessary anymore because there'll be a prevention and cure. I mean, that's the real goal.
Absolutely. And Linda, one last question for you. So, you know, after all these years and in so many roles, so what does leadership mean for you, and maybe particularly as a woman?
Oh gosh, Fran, leadership is being a team leader, because I don't think anybody could do it alone. And I think the most important role for a leader is to really build a good team and have trust in them and empower them to do what they do best. And that's what I love most about my work with the ADA and then the IDF, is the fact that, you know, we had really great people and we worked together to make a difference. We all had our unique contribution, including my time with you in Washington, D.C. with all those young people, chasing them all over the Capitol.
Yeah. I just want to say, just in follow-up, so when I was a young faculty member, we had our first nascent women's group at the University of Southern California, and our first speaker was the first woman governor who was elected independent of her husband having been governor before, Madeline Kunin from Vermont. And she got up on that podium and she said, you know, to be a woman leader, we have to get beyond, shh, don't fight. Shh, make peace. We've got to fight the good fight, and we've got to make the right peace, and we've got to bring with us the right vision and all the people around it. And, you know, for the two of you who I've known for all these years, I think you really kind of embody that. Not afraid to stand up for what really needs to get done, and really consensus builders, which is what it's all about. So thank you both. And Ruth, enjoy, you're almost done. And Linda, keep all those memories burning.
I have them tucked away. Thank you.
Such a difference. Okay.
Thank you all for all you do.
Exactly.
Thanks. So I think we are ready for the next panel. Great. So this panel is also very dear to my heart. I've known Lisa for, I don't know, Lisa, it's got to be 30 years at least. And Cynthia, not only do I know well, but I get to work with at my institution. So I will start with introducing Cynthia Munoz, Dr. Cynthia Munoz, who is a current president of healthcare and education for the ADA. She's also president of the Los Angeles Community Leadership Board for the ADA. She's a member of the ADA's National Safe at School Working Group and the ADA Committee on Mental Health Diabetes Education Programs. And I think has been working a lot trying to find healthcare providers, mental health care providers across the country, get a registry of them who are diabetes knowledgeable. So Cynthia is a psychologist at Children's Hospital Los Angeles and an assistant professor of pediatrics at the University of Southern California, my institutions. And I get to share some patients with Cynthia. And I saw one of them, you know, last week, Cynthia, and all I can tell you is, I don't know what you did, but it was a miracle, because from not having the skills, the desire, whatever it would take to manage her diabetes, she's now started down the right road. So thank you very much for that. And Lisa, who I got to work with when, I don't know, was it 25 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago? I'd go up to Sacramento and we would lobby to get things in place for people with diabetes. And at that point, Lisa was head of advocacy for the state of California, then the Western regions, and now she's chief advocacy officer for the ADA. And I just want to quickly say that when we would go up there, we'd often bring some children with diabetes and their families, and we'd have them meet with, you know, the state assembly or the state senate and put forth their issues about managing their diabetes in school. And one time we were up there, and of course, you know, it's a free-for-all in these political arenas where everybody can get to be in front of these legislators. with their issues. And here's our amazing, wonderful children with diabetes, and surrounded by cages filled with ferrets because somebody was trying to advocate to make the ferret the legal pet in the state of California. So that's what democracy is all about. So now moving on to you two. I'm going to start with you, Lisa. So you've had a really long time talking about advocacy and legislative efforts. So when you look back, what are really the most important things that you think have been accomplished over these years?
Well, first of all, I just want to say when I started my career with ADA, we were really still rubbing sticks together to make fire. Seriously, I remember getting my first AOL 1.0 account. And I mean, I had arrived at that point. It's been an amazing journey, and many of you have, been involved with me along the way. I see so many faces that I recognize and have memories over. And Fran, if I can just for a minute digress to say that my first time lobbying with you on Capitol Hill, you wore these amazing boots with silver rosettes on the back. And they set off every metal detector in the Rayburn building and in the house, the Hart building and the Canning building, but they were worth it. They were so amazingly cool. So it's been a long time. It's 30 plus years when I started with ADA. There was really very small organization for government affairs. Each state was its own affiliate. We've now incorporated into one organization. That happened in 1999 or 1998, I'm sorry. At about the same time, ADA's advocacy program started growing. We started focusing our efforts on one unified set of legislative and regulatory priorities, which really helped harness what we were doing. And we created really powerful national advocacy committees. Dr. Kaufman has been a past chair of that committee. Ann Albright has been a past chair of that committee. And today that committee still exists. And we have, they provide guidance to 500,000 plus advocates from across the country who we regularly engage with on issues related to advocacy. We've had a lot of success with advocacy. There's still so much to be done. I mean, I think no one discounts the work that we have to do still, and we can talk about that a little bit in a minute. But in terms of big accomplishments, I think we can't discount the amazing and audacious efforts that we've had in legal advocacy. This program is unique to ADA, has been around for nearly 3 decades, was created by one of my mentors previously, Sharita Arendt, who was the former head of ADA's government affairs program. We did things that no one thought we could do. We took on KinderCare, the nation's largest childcare chain, operating in 39 states and the District of Columbia, because they wouldn't allow children with diabetes to enroll in their programs, and we won. These are examples of the kind of work ADA has done. People told us we were crazy, that we couldn't go into states and ensure that kids with diabetes were safe at school. But you'll remember, I hauled you all around the state capitol in California, and we've done that in multiple states. Today, 33 states meet ADA's tenets for safe at school for children. That's not a perfect solution. We still have problems, but it's better than it was. People told us we were crazy when we had a decade-long fight with the FAA to try to get them to allow insulin users to become commercial pilots. And yet we prevailed. In 2019, the FAA changed their rules to allow insulin using pilots to captain commercial planes. We've had great success. There are a lot of things we're working on. There are a lot of things we need to continue to work on, and we can talk about that a bit more. These are highlights, but every day we have people who contact us for legal advocacy help, who are facing real problems with their childcare or with schools for their children or with their employers for simple things like accommodations for bathroom breaks. The list goes on. We've been blessed to have amazingly strong volunteers who've been part of this process and partnering with us in these efforts. But we have a long ways to go.
Yeah, to me, the advocacy committee, the advocacy efforts is like the hidden gem of the ADA. I mean, it does so much quiet work behind the scenes on an individual basis and then on a collective basis. So I want to thank you, Lisa, who I remember when I first got that automatic dial, you could put numbers in your phone. You were at the top of my list for a really long time.
Well, I hope to be there again.
Okay. Well, I don't even have a list anymore. And Cynthia, what an amazing journey you have. And your presidential address this year was just amazing, from a both very heart-rendering account of your own family, and maybe you could share some of that with us, and a little bit about hashtag efforts that you're doing, hashtag health equity now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, it's such an honor to be here. I also just want to take a second to, I don't know, I have so many emotions about just being in the same little space with all of these incredible, people, and Fran and Lisa. With the two of you, we've known each other for quite some time, and we've done a lot of really good work, and we know we have so much more to do. Being on this journey as president of healthcare and education, I think particularly with Tracy Brown at the helm, has been an incredible experience. I know many people describe Tracy as transformational. They describe her as impactful, as a force. She challenges us to be bold and to do all these things, to ask questions and to know what the problem is, right? When we begin a conversation, it's about what is the problem and what are we trying to solve? And I really appreciate that as a scientist. And we're all scientists, and so we really want to define what it is that we're looking at. So when I think back about the presidential address, and you're asking about health equity now, I mean, it really is all about people. And it's all about people with, with all types of experiences. I really appreciate, and this really hit home for me when Tracy said, that it's so important to see people, hear people, and understand people. Because, similar to what she was saying, if I look at my family and my life experience, if you don't see me, hear me, or understand me, you're not going to reach me. So in my presidential address, I did talk some about my family. So I'm a daughter of immigrants. My mother and father both immigrated from Peru. I'm an English language learner. That's a fun fact. I didn't include that in my talk. And so, here I am, as someone who learned English in school here in the States. I, had the support of incredible women, including Lisa, you, and Fran, of course, you. And so, I've accomplished as much as I have because I've had the support of women like you, who saw me, who heard me, who understood me, and who saw potential that in the beginning I probably didn't see. And so, the presidential address, as Ruth also mentioned, was a huge opportunity to talk about things that are incredibly important. So yes, my family's impacted by, all types of diabetes. And, unfortunately, we've lost some family members because of diabetes. I mentioned my husband, who lost both parents, his mother when he was, a very young adult, and no one should have to lose a family member to diabetes. And this is, the curve that we are trying to bend or change, again, using some of these, words that, Tracy has inspired us to use, because it makes sense. Too many people have suffered for too long. And with health equity now, what we have really wanted to do is to make a change by really thinking through what the problem is and what we can do to affect change directly within, for, and with the communities that are impacted. So that involves people of color, and Tracy, has shared all these, wonderful numbers, all the data with us, right? But when we think about the data, I mean, this represents people. We think about people with diabetes, and that being 6 times more likely to be hospitalized if they have diabetes and COVID, 12 times more likely to die of COVID if they have diabetes. And then we look at people of color and indigenous people, where there's 2.4 times more deaths, for Indigenous people with diabetes and COVID-19, and all of these numbers that represent the people whose communities we are a part of. So health equity now was a really big deal. It is a big deal, and this is just the beginning. So I'll end this answer by just mentioning that Tracy Brown really has envisioned, Tracy, you envisioned a meaningful role for ADA and how we as an association, as people, could partner with others to make a dent in the disparities that have affected people with diabetes and people of color forever. But a lot of these disparities that really came to light during the pandemic. And so with that came the Health Equity Bill of Rights, these multi-million-dollar health equity now partnerships with Abbott and Baxter and Walmart and more. Again, everyone, this is just the beginning. We are making a dent and we have so much more to do. I'm really excited to be a part of this.
Well, plus, you guys wrote, so Tracy, you, Cynthia, you, Ruth, and you, Bob, wrote a piece in Diabetes Care about the issues internally in the diabetes world for women. So, about 49% of endocrinologists are women, 70% of the fellows are women, and, 2 to 12% of major ADA, JDRF, or EASD awards go to women. So, and I loved, I'm just going to quote this, in recent years, the ADA has taken steps to improve processes, policies, and practice and culture to reduce inequities because evolution starts within. So, and that's why putting today's panel together was so exciting to really feature. And Bob, thank you for joining us, because obviously this is not only about women, but it's about women and our allies, our partners, and particularly those who support women's efforts. But, putting those kind of statements forward, looking at, who's on our own editorial boards and who's on our own committees, I think is really, really important. So thank you. And another question for you, Lisa. So I consider you an ADA lifer. I don't know if you've had another position with another organization, but you were pretty young. I was kind of young when we started all this. So, again, why? I mean, is it that you can accomplish things? There's still so much to accomplish. It's because it's personally touched you. I mean, what makes you an ADA lifer?
I have actually had other positions, but I apparently I'm retaining some youth, which is good. Why am I an ADA lifer? Well, I don't know if people, a lot of people don't know this, but I lost a brother to diabetes. He passed away at the age of 33. I don't want what happened to me and my family to ever happen to anybody else. And so I come to work every day. I have a picture of him in my office. I come to work every day with that knowledge, with that goal of we need to make the world a better place for people with diabetes and their families. No one should have to go through what my family went through. In addition, I am a huge advocacy geek. I love the legislative process. For those who don't know me very well, it for me is a thing of beauty. In its purest form, it is a magical thing to push a bill through from concept to become law to meaningfully impact people. When I look at what the diabetes community, and not just ADA, but our partners and stakeholders have done to make insulin more affordable, to really ramp that fight up, and we're not done yet, but we're getting to the point where we've gotten a lot of attention and we're starting to see movement, to look at other things we can do to improve access to technologies that makes people's lives better for living with diabetes. It's a very rewarding thing. For all the years that I've put into this, I've gotten so much back. And really just encourage you, if you haven't gotten involved in advocacy, please let me know what your passions are. Please let me know where you want to plug in. I invite you all to find out what advocacy is and how you can be part of it. It's part of our right as Americans, and everybody should have experience in that process.
Yeah. And I will admit, she makes it fun. She really does. Cynthia, one last question for you. So you've given a lot to ADA. I listed all those things you're now doing. What has the ADA given back to you?
The ADA has given so much back to me. You know, I work with my day job involves working with children, with you know, youth and their families, all impacted by diabetes. And the ADA really gives me an opportunity to provide, you know, these children and their families with information about, you know, how to optimally care for themselves as whole people. So whole person care is something that I believe is really important. I think it's something that the ADA allows me to do in a very meaningful way. And it's all coming from this space of data and research. And so ADA gives back an opportunity to give education, to give families opportunities for you know, meeting one another and supporting one another through its camps throughout the country. It gives me an opportunity to interact and work with other mental health professionals who specialize and who are knowledgeable about people with diabetes, and developing, you know, stronger networks and talking with our fellow mental health professionals about this important work and how we need more people in this space. The ADA really gives back, you know, a lot of inspiration also to do what I do. Working in diabetes, whether you're a diabetes advocate, whether you're a healthcare professional in the diabetes space, it is not easy to do. Diabetes is relentless. And so what we do is relentless, and we have passion, we care, we want to do this. We choose to do this every single day. The ADA gives me the energy, it gives me the information, it gives me the, you know, all of these things that I can then pass along to other families. And that is more than I can ask for.
Thank you. Thank you both. And it is now time for us to go on to the third panel. So this is our third panel with Dr. Sharita Hill-Golden and Dr. Bob Gabay. So let me introduce Sharita first. So Sharita is, and I want to tell you that I've rarely seen a CV like yours, Sharita. It was amazing. Is a Hugh P. McCormick Family Professor of Endocrinology and Metabolism and Vice President and Chief Diversity Officer for Johns Hopkins Medicine. She holds a number of joint appointments in the Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health and the Armstrong Institute for Patient Safety and Quality. And she is a current board member of the American Diabetes Association on our national board. And honestly, your CV, your resume, what you have accomplished is like a work of art. So thank you for being with us today. And Dr. Robert Bob Gabay is our Chief Scientific and Medical Officer for the ADA. And Dr. Gabay's efforts are really to look at the scope of prevention, intervention, care, and cure. So thank you for all of that, Bob. Before coming to the ADA, he was Chief Medical Officer and Senior Vice President at the Joslin Diabetes Center, and at Harvard, he was an Associate Professor at Harvard Medical School. And before that, he was a Professor of Medicine at Penn State University College of Medicine. And, you know, the amazing thing about Bob is he is accessible. I've never seen somebody as accessible. So he picks up his phone, he answers his emails, he solves problems. And I know that because I've already sent him a couple of mine and he solved them already. So thank you, Bob, for all of that. So Sharita, I am absolutely convinced you could go on any board anywhere in the entire world, if not universe. So why the ADA?
You know, it's been so inspiring to listen to everyone who's come before me, but I think we all have stories, you know, that help us inform our decisions. And so when I was a second-year medical student, the very first patient I saw had type 1 diabetes, was about the age of Lisa's brother. that she mentioned, and he had every complication of diabetes. And so you might think that, and this would have been like in 1991, so this was pre-DCCT, but then by the time I was a fourth year medical student, DCCT came out. And I was like, oh, you mean we have the tools now to like improve care for people with diabetes? And I was completely sold at that point. You know, I went to medical school to be a pediatrician, and I left wanting to be an endocrinologist, focusing on diabetes and really improving the quality of life for people with diabetes. And, you know, the way I first came into the ADA, of course, was as a professional member. You know, it was my very first scientific meeting when I was a resident. You know, I had a poster in the president's poster section. I was so excited to have a meeting bag, like the ADA was in Boston that year. But that was the premier scientific meeting that my mentor, the late Fred Brancati, took all of us to. And so he and Dr. Christopher Sadek, who was the past president of the ADA, you know, they took all of their training, they took all of us to that meeting. So that's where I got to meet a lot of the leaders in the diabetes space scientifically. So as I was, you know, throughout my career, you know, I'd served on the Scientific Sessions Planning Committee. I've been an associate editor for Diabetes Care, but that was really all on the scientific side. And as I was thinking about how did I really want to make an impact for people with diabetes, you know, I thought one way was advocacy. So like, who is the organization that really has the ear of our legislators to improve the lives of people with diabetes? And then the other was making sure that I could help the ADA, like sort of have to pivot as like things have been changing. So when I joined the board in 2015, I had just also taken on a job at Hopkins as executive vice chair of the Department of Medicine. So I was actually looking at our healthcare organization, having to navigate changes in how healthcare structure is structured, how it's financed. And I'm like, this is going to impact people with diabetes. So I want to actually be in a position to help the ADA understand how that landscape is changing. So not just the scientific contribution, but thinking about how to strategically position itself, how to make sure that it ensures its financial viability as markets are changing and donors don't have as much money. So that I wanted to really be able, the organization that had done so much for me, for my career development, I wanted to give that back to the ADA in some way.
Yeah, and I think you're right. The ADA is a first for so many of us. It was my first meeting. It was my first poster. It was my first grant. I don't think it was my first bag though. Yeah, but you know, it obviously impacted on so many of our developmental lives as physicians and endocrinologists. So thank you for that. So Bob, I could ask you the same thing. I mean, you've had some phenomenal positions already. What drew you to the ADA? I mean, is there some set of goals that that are driving you, or is it you know, the scope of the organization? Share some of your thoughts with us.
Yeah, thanks, Fran. You know, first I'll just say it's wonderful to be at this event. And literally, as I look across all of the panelists and everybody that's spoken, I mean, it's an incredible group of extraordinary women that I've had the pleasure of working with, some for decades and some over these last few years. And I've learned so much from all of them. And, you know, today being Tracy's last official day at ADA, I wouldn't be here if it weren't for Tracy. And I suspect that there are a number of other people here that would say the same thing. She's an inspirational leader that I could go on and on. But to answer your question, you know, like I think most everybody here, I've been on this quest for impact. And, you know, my last role was, a super impactful one at the Joslin Diabetes Center, the greatest diabetes center in the world in many ways, and leading the care delivery. And so there weren't many other jobs that I would say, oh, I could have more impact. And this is certainly the one. And so, you know, the American Diabetes Association, A, serves all people with diabetes. B, is involved in so many different aspects. And so it really was, in the end, it was an offer I couldn't refuse. And I've just so happy that I've done that. It's been a wonderful ride already and excited for more. And we've got some lofty goals that we want to achieve. And have built a great team to be able to do that. And so, yeah, I'm really excited.
Yeah, and we're excited that you're going to have some major impact on the next CEO as we're all, I mean, this is a sad day, I know, for all of us. And I just want you to know that maybe she's somewhere in this Zoom meeting. So don't forget that. So,
Yeah.
Sharita, for you, what does volunteerism mean? I mean, why are you, you're so busy, you've got so much going on, and yet it seems like you're a pretty committed volunteer as well.
I think it's all about mission and what you're called to do. So I felt called to medical school to take care of people with diabetes. And, and one of the other things that drew me to that area, not just that diabetes was a growing public health epidemic. It was at the time. I didn't know it would be 34 million people like it is today. But the other thing that was happening in the early 90s is it was disproportionately impacting Black and Brown communities. And, my father-in-law died from complications of diabetes just 10 years ago. I mean, like, this still happens. And so for me, it's very personal because those genes are in my son. So in other words, like, this is a family conversation that's personal, but then it's also professional for me. So even though, now I'm a vice president and chief diversity officer, diabetes intersects there. What is a sort of a health disparity exemplar condition? It's diabetes, but yet it's also a condition where we have been shown that multi-level interventions can improve outcomes. So we can translate what we've learned to diabetes to other chronic diseases. So, I think those are all the things that keep me passionate. I want to make sure that people don't forget people with diabetes, that they are out there, that there should be no stigma attached, that they should get what they need, because diabetes intersects everything. And, I remember, like, when COVID was first starting, I was kind of like, Hopkins shut down. I said, I'm so glad I'm not a pulmonologist or an infectious disease doctor. I'm going to use these 2 weeks to study for my boards, catch up on some papers. And then within like a week, they were like, oh, diabetes is like, a major factor for a poor outcome. I was like, well, I guess now I'm fully engaged in COVID-19. And, because I think that because diabetes impacts so many areas of life, that it's just something that I feel called to do, that'll always be in my blood and a part of what I do in my career.
Well, we are lucky to have you, that's for sure. So Bob, you talk about, obviously coming over for more impact. So what would in 5 years, you could look back and say, I had the impact I was hoping for? What are some of those efforts, goals? I love this fourth network concept, and obviously hashtag health equity now, but I'd love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, so I'd first start with what and then how. And so the what is fundamentally bending the curve in 3 ways. Bending the curve on number of people with diabetes, where, COVID, if anything, maybe increasing those numbers, and that's really scary. It's the last thing we needed as a fuel. It's bending the curve on complications. We've done some work with that, but there's more to do. You just heard examples of people that are still dying and still losing their eyesight, dialysis, amputations, and health disparities, fits underneath all of these, because in every category, who is more adversely affected. And then the third, which, is from a societal perspective, we do need to address the cost of care, because, with the number of people projected to have diabetes, we will not be able to afford to care for them. And the good news is, if we achieve the first 2 things by reducing the number of people with diabetes or developing diabetes and fewer complications, that's most of the cost. So then the second piece of this is how do we go about doing that? And I'll give you 3 broad areas that the ADA has been and continues to be engaged in. The first is spreading the word. So one of the wonderful things about being at ADA is in so many ways, we're the voice of diabetes. And to people living with diabetes, to providers that want to care for individuals with diabetes, really that the whole ecosystem, and to the general public. So one is doubling down on spreading the word. The second is what Lisa talked about, and that's advocating for change. We are in a unique position. I would argue in the world to be the advocates for change that can address, access to diabetes treatments, to the Bill of Rights around health equity, which we're doing a lot of work on. So that's the second. And then the third is really improving care. And we have so much to do there because we know, despite all of the wonderful new therapies, new technology in the last decade for diabetes, we've really not moved the needle on glycemic control, for example. And so, yes, we need to do that with more research, but some of that research needs to be, how do we make it happen? How do we improve care? And that's innovative education, that is working with health systems, that's at many, many levels, and with individuals with diabetes. So I think, through spreading the word, advocating for change, and working to improve health outcomes is how we get there.
Great, thank you. So Sharita, tell me about the board. So I was on the board a long time ago. There were 40 members. A 40-member board doesn't do anything other than rubber stamp whatever's put in front of them. Now, my understanding, it's like 14 or 16 members, depending on how you count the officers. So is it composed correctly, in your opinion? Is it really an action-oriented group? And maybe even more importantly, is it fun?
So I'll answer the last one first. It's like tons of fun because of all the wonderful colleagues that you get to meet across, and not just like a lot of us in medicine and healthcare and education know one another, but then all the great people that you get to meet, sort of on the business side and in other organizations. So it's definitely fun, but it is a lot of work. It is a lot of work and effort because the board is smaller now. There are members that are from medicine, science, healthcare, and education. We have members who are from like the public health space. Other members are from the finance and business sector. And so that's a very interesting combination of individuals because, but I think it's necessary because you can't just look at one aspect of the organization to make decisions. And that's why you need a board that has that multifaceted composition. So, my boss in my prior job would say no money, no mission. So that is true, but you don't want your financial decisions to compromise like the overall mission. You have to keep that mission and vision front and center. And so that's where I think that's where the board is helpful in supporting the CEO and helping to make those decisions so that there is that engagement. But at the same time, a board member should allow the CEO and his or her team to like innovate and be creative. And we should be a resource to help support moving that forward. So, I think, and when the board's composed the right way with that type of balance, then you actually learn from you actually end up learning as much as you are contributing because it allows you to appreciate other perspectives in the work. And, I'll admit I'm one of those people, I'm a very bizarre scientist because I have like a scientific side to my brain and then I have like a operational administrative side to my brain. So it's like, we have to make decisions that are going to support the mission, but we've also got to make sure the organization is financially solvent. So like that combination is the really critical work of the board.
Right. Well, thank you for that answer. And I hope you've, maybe gotten some of our listeners, our Zoom members, to be interested perhaps one day on thinking about being on the board. So I think we are out of time. It seemed like it flew by for me. And I just want to thank everybody. I do want to say to Tracy, since I didn't have my opportunity, Another huge thank you. You know, I'm a big Eleanor Roosevelt fan, and I think you embody what she always said was to, you know, to take care of yourself, you need your brains, but to take care of others, you need your heart. So I think you have embodied that during your leadership time, and I'm sure it will continue. And I want to thank you. I want to thank Kelly, you know, for this vision and this opportunity, and then all of the amazing women, and Dr. Gabay as well, for being on the panel with me to share your perspective and your experiences. I mean, you know, collectively, I don't know, there's probably a couple hundred years of service to diabetes, if not more, maybe hundreds of years of service to diabetes and the ADA. You know, I used to joke with my husband, his grandmother's name was Ada. You know, we've always been committed to Ada, whether it's the grandmother or to the ADA. So thank you, everybody. And now there's going to be one quick slide, I think, just kind of mentioning that the ADA committee nominations are open. So if any of you are interested for yourself or somebody you know, please look at the www.diabetes.org committee applications webpage and think about how you might be of service in the ADA. And then I think the next slide, there's a list of committees if you're interested, and or you can go to the website. And then I am going to turn it over to Michael Johnson from Abbott and thank him as well, because without him, there would not have been today. So thank you, Michael.
Wow, 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 wow. What an amazing, wild session today. I'm gonna pile on, Tracy. I know I said it before, but thank you very, very much for your tremendous inspirational leadership, visionary leadership. You know, here at Abbott, we are dedicated to helping people with diabetes live fuller lives. And you've enlarged our vision in so many ways on how we can make that happen. I thank you for the opportunities that you've given to everyone in the industry to go ahead and support the vision of the ADA. I also would be remiss not to thank Dr. Kaufman for an amazing, amazing panel that she developed and facilitated. And of course, all the panel members, incredibly inspiring and exciting. And, you know, at Abbott, we are so proud to be a sponsor of WILD. You know, I consider myself an alumnus of our Abbott's diabetes business. It was a business I had wanted to work in from my first entry into healthcare 25 years ago, and it was a dream fulfilled to have an opportunity to do it during Tracy's leadership and during this amazing, amazing time that we see diabetes care beginning to change and people working towards bending the curve. I do want to say to those on the line, WILD is this amazing opportunity for women and allies to go ahead and to support something that is fundamentally incredibly good, to create and provide equal opportunities for professional growth and healthcare access. Because we know that more diverse teams will improve patient care around the world. And that is what we are all committed to. I am incredibly encouraged and inspired by the ADA leadership that we see here. And I don't want to take up any more time. I want to go ahead and create opportunities for people to ask questions, but I would encourage you, if you haven't signed up for a WILD event, other than this one, please sign up for future ones. If your company isn't a sponsor, please encourage them to get involved, because it's a chance to make a difference and to have an incredible opportunity. And with that, I'll turn it over to Chloe in WILD.
Thank you so much, Michael. And hello, everyone. My name is Chloe Harris, and I'm the associate at Close Concerns working on our WILD initiative. One of our main goals is to foster community and allow you all, established and emerging women leaders in diabetes, to connect and engage with one another. So in that spirit, we are now going to be offering a 30-minute Q&A with our 6 panelists. For this part, we ask that everyone who is able to please turn on their cameras, as we will be bringing the whole group together to highlight our wild community. There are 2 ways that you can ask questions to our speakers. If you'd like to ask your question directly, please use the raise hand feature located within the reactions button of the Zoom toolbar. We will do our very best to get to you as many questions as we can, and we'll call on you when it's your turn to speak. We ask that you then unmute your mic, turn on your camera, and share your questions with the group. If you would like to have your question read to the panelists, please enter it in the Zoom chat. If you'd like to have your name displayed to the whole group, you can send the question to everyone in the chat drop-down menu, and then enter your question along with to whom it is addressed. And if you'd like to ask your question anonymously, please send a direct message in the Zoom chat to Rebecca McClure, and we will not include your name when we pose your question. Thank you so much for your participation, and please go ahead with raising your hand or dropping questions in the chat. Thanks.
I'm going to let, I saw Kelly's hand and I do have a question, but I want Kelly to be Mueller to have her chance. Sorry about that.
Oh boy. Okay, kicking it off. Okay, for Tracy, you've obviously taken us to the next like 10 levels in all of the things. So just thank you so much. And, you know, I think in the work that I've had the honor of doing with you on the Health Equity Now stuff, you know, it's been really important in talking about it. Like, I wonder if you would share like your experience as a Black woman in charge of the ADA and any insights there and how meaningful it is to carry that forward for everybody. Leave us with some good challenges.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Kelly, first, it's been a pleasure working with you and learning and growing with you on this journey. I think Health Equity Now, you know, what it's really about is getting to this groundwater solutions, right? What it's really about is recognizing and understanding that racism is alive and well in this country, and understanding that that is actually the basis of the inequities, right? I could take us all the way back to the 1600s, and I'll spare the long timeline, but you can call me later if you want to get it. If you go all the way back to the 1600s through today, you will see many of the laws, the legislations, the policies that were put in place are in fact manifest themselves today in the social determinants of health. Like those were all created by those long ago policies and procedures starting back, you know, in the 1700s. You know, to become a US citizen, you were white. If you were a person of color, you could not become a citizen. That is the first form of wealth discrimination, because land was the form of wealth, and if you weren't a citizen, you couldn't get the land, so on and so forth. So I think as this moment in time, right, I think this is a unique moment with COVID, with people reevaluating themselves, with the social unrest, with the George Floyd murder and all of those things. There's an important moment for all of us to reconcile our role in this journey of dismantling the inequities. So specifically as it relates to bringing a African-American woman leading an organization where a large, disproportionate number of people are suffering and dying with diabetes, obviously that's heavy and it's weighty, right? I wanted to make sure that we as an organization are doing everything that we possibly can to change that. And if it were easy, it would already be done. We know it's not actually easy, but it starts with self. And so that is why my journey within the ADA has been to reach people in the community, reach people within the ADA, because that self-exploration of what is my role, because we all have bias, we all contribute in some way, shape, or form to this inequity. And I even know the growth and evolution you have done personally through the Racial Equity Institute training you've gone through, Kelly. That's where it starts, at the individual level. So we got a lot of work to do, but here's what I do know. Unless we do it together, and unless we start to change the power structure in this country, we're really not going to take the leaps and bounds forward that we need to from a health perspective or otherwise.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And we have a question from Jeff Halpern to all of our panelists. And he asks, it sounds like the opportunities for women to lead in diabetes has never been better. How do we make sure and keep those opportunities growing, not just for women, but for everyone, including people of color and every group impacted by diabetes? And this is addressed to the whole group for whomever would like to take it.
I'd be happy to start with that one because it's interesting. I like Tracy and Cynthia and others on the panel I'm intersectional. So I'm a woman, but I'm also a Black woman. And so that sort of brings a couple of sets of experiences. And, I think one of the things that, under Jane Rush's leadership that she had developed the WIN network. So that's like the women in the ADA network. And, I can tell you, I've been going to the ADA meetings since 1997, and there is really like not a place for me to figure out where are the other Black scientists who are actually doing similar work, who can mentor me or I can exchange ideas with, and just to be, sort of a safe space. So I know that one of the things that Cynthia has been working on is for us to be able to establish a network for our underrepresented membership so that they have that sense of home and belonging as well. Because, I think we just don't want to be focused on inclusion, but we want the culture and the organization to be welcoming to everyone. And so I think having those kind of safe spaces would be really important. And then you can mentor and guide the younger generation of women and underrepresented members to then want to become board members and future officers and the like.
I'd like to, this is Linda Seminario, and I'd like to add to that. And that is also including people who have been, are getting more representation, but still there's a little work to be done in the area of including all disciplines and elevating them. I think with COVID, we've seen the important role of nurses for sure, but with diabetes, it's dietitians, it's social workers, it's caseworkers, it's community workers. And I think in order to really represent community on a large scale, we have to make sure we empower all of those people and make sure their science, their clinical skills, their guidelines, everything a part of what we tout in this organization. I think it's really, really important, and elevate them. So that's my 2 cents.
And I'd like to add to that. I 100% agree with both of my colleagues. And I think that all of us also should try to identify individuals who can serve and nominate them and mentor them and do it in a very deliberate manner. So that I think there are many individuals from underrepresented groups, women who have this imposter syndrome. They don't think they're good enough where they really are. I mean, they're just as good, if not better, than many of others who are being nominated. So I think all of us should work together to encourage young people, people from all disciplines, all races and ethnicities and countries to volunteer so we can get all of the diversity that we need to benefit us all, particularly people with diabetes. But we need to encourage people because some otherwise will not think to nominate themselves and mentor them.
Wonderful, thank you all. We have another question from Trang Lai. She says, for panelists, we would love to know what you consider to be your most impactful contribution with ADA to date and why.
This is Linda, and I just feel that a contribution that I made, and it was just ripe at the time, is that we've got to be patient-centered. We've got to get people that need to self-manage. We need to stop looking at just clinical outcomes, but behavior change and the importance of a team. I just, a snippet from my experience with the ADA is I was asked to be the first woman nurse to be the editor of Diabetes Forecast. And traditionally it had been a man and a physician. And when I joined it, I said, well, where's the team? How could I possibly look at these articles and not have a pharmacist on board or a social worker? And so to me, that was very memorable, because since that time, the group for Forecast has always represented the diabetes community. So that was my very memorable contribution to the association. I hope it was memorable to others. Thank you.
I'll go next. I think one of the issues is when you serve, whenever that time may be, there's some serendipity into what's happening around you in the field of diabetes. And I think one of the amazing things about how the ADA supports their leadership and their volunteers in being able to run with it. So during my presidency, the DPP was announced. And we really had the opportunity to, make it with then Secretary of HHS, Tommy Thompson, a really significant impact on being able to collaborate in bringing out the DPP and being part of the leaders. So I think one of it is you may have your own concepts of what you're trying to achieve, but you have to kind of go when your time is. And I think Linda's time was right for her, to really be able to take advantage. But so it doesn't matter what it may be. It's looking at the science, it's looking at what the relevant issues of the time are, garnering support within the association itself, collaborating with external groups, and really being part of a bigger movement. And you have that opportunity.
Yeah, I would say for me is actually been being on the ADA board during a CEO search. That was not a process I had been a part of previously. And in fact, those who joined, I think Cynthia and I on this panel joined at the same time. And I remember they said, so, just to let you all know, tomorrow you're going to interview CEO candidates. And we were like, what? We're still learning the bylaws and but that was such a critical process, because I realized who the leader is really impacts the vision. So I am very proud to have been a part of the board that actually voted for Tracy to become our new CEO, and to actually have been able to be a voice on the board as we've navigated some pretty challenging circumstances. And, and I think in that, being able to find my own voice, as a diabetes clinician, to advocate and speak up for those who don't have a voice who have diabetes, has really actually given me the courage to do that in other walks of life. So that has really been an amazing experience. So, I was, Cynthia and I guess were there at the beginning and on Tracy's last day. Tracy started out on the board with us, but just, to be a part of that process, I'm proud to have been a part of that process, and sort of helping shepherd the organization through its challenges to the point of being that it's thriving now.
Sharita, I could not agree with you more. I think that is definitely something to be proud of, to have been like you, another person that said, yes, Tracy is the right person to take this organization, as Kelly said, up, 10 notches and to really build on, the good work that had been done and needed to be done. I think another something that was really meaningful for the organization was in the space of mental health. And I really appreciate, Tracy and all of our leaders, support and belief in mental health. And so during my time on several different committees, it has really been such a joy, I think is really the right word for it, to see the ADA develop and launch the first of its kind mental health diabetes education program, to see the work of our immediate past president, Mary DeGroot, with mental health toolkits and a lot of really important information going out to for primary care providers and all providers, really, all people who care for people with diabetes. So all of that work in the mental health space, which has also intersected with our safe at school work, has been really important. Producing guidelines for mental health considerations during the pandemic, a lot of really, really important work. And for me, coming from the space of being a pediatric psychologist and having worked a lot with, kids with type 1 diabetes and then increasingly with type 2 diabetes, we have created so much really important content and work for our professional communities and for the families. So big contributions from the American Diabetes Association that I'm really proud of.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Next, we'd love to hear from you, Erin Callahan, the wonderful Director of Community Impact at the ADA.
Thanks, Chloe. Hi, everyone. And I'm thrilled to pile on the veneration for our panelists today. And it's been an honor, Tracy, working with you and getting to know you over the last three and a half years. One of the things as I'm distilling all the stuff that these incredible leaders are saying that keeps coming to me is the notion of change. And as we talk about words like dismantling and disrupting and trying new things, at the core of it is truly a change for a lot of perspectives and individuals. Not only are people living with diabetes embracing things like technology that's going to help us live better and longer lives, but also the professionals who are practicing diabetes care. And from your leadership perspective, how can you encourage us to embrace that change and to be fearless in the face of the changes that we're living in and will soon be coming our way also?
This is Linda, Seminario, and as far as what a role could play with ADA, and you referenced telehealth, is there so much policy change and advocacy that needs to happen. And we're so behind the policies for payment for telehealth, access to telehealth. And if ADA could be one of the leaders to help, because I think it's an incredible resource. I do research in rural Appalachian communities, and we have a study on telehealth. It's very well received. And so we've got to use it as a vehicle for care and support.
I'll go next. I do, oh, sorry. Somebody's calling me. I do think that change in some ways is part of the ADA. I think you could see it in, obviously, we keep redoing the standards of care. We keep redoing the bylaws. Maybe we're a notch behind the fastest movers of change, but I think healthcare is slow altogether. But I do think in other healthcare arenas, we're perhaps a good model for change. Change is always hard. Change is hard for people with diabetes. It's hard for the practitioners. It's hard for the industry. It's hard for, grants, everything. But I do think at the core, ADA, and I think, Tracy really embodied this in a significant way and will leave us with that legacy, is that it is our job to change. And it's our job to disrupt. And it's our job to innovate. And that's what, grants are about. I mean, so I think we just have to maybe bring it as our core value a little bit farther to the front, but it is inherent in what the organization is and stands for.
I agree. I think we have to try to convey that we all need to change. We all need to have open minds, be flexible. There are always better ways of doing things than we're doing them now. And we won't always be right. We might try something, it won't work, but the important thing is we try it, assess it, evaluate it, and then move on, either accept it, embrace it because it worked, or else try something else. But if you don't embrace change and try to make things better, which means having an open mind, being flexible, challenging the status quo, and trying new approaches, then we will never get ahead. We'll never get to where we are. So I like to present change as something wonderful, something good, something we must do, but we must evaluate it. So not all change is good. And our job is to do what makes sense based on the data available, on some good ideas that maybe we hadn't thought of before, but it's worth trying, but evaluate and then reassess and move on and continue to change and evolve till we meet our goals.
I'll add to my colleagues around change. I think part of it is, and I think this is something that has helped us within ADA, is to have a North Star during all the change, and that North Star is it good for people with diabetes? And if you can argue that change has a chance of being good for people with diabetes, then yeah, it's worth trying. If it's not going to be good, then yeah, you may need to reconsider that. So having a North Star can be helpful in uniting people around change.
I was going to add one more comment about change. And I really liked Bob's last point, because I think that during the pandemic, there were many things that changed because they had to rapidly, but all of those things that changed for people with diabetes need to continue beyond COVID-19. And I know at our organization, we had more patients that were able to access their self-management appointments when we switched to telehealth, because they could do it wherever they were, and the state paid for that. So I plan to advocate to our state to make sure that can still happen beyond COVID. And this became my favorite pandemic quote, and I just want to share it. It says, "Nothing should go back to normal. Normal wasn't working. If we go back to the way things were, we will have lost the lesson. May we rise up and do better." And I think that's what we have to think about. COVID-19 caused a lot of shifts in how we deliver healthcare to people with diabetes, but probably most of us probably thought for the last 20 years that shift needed to have been made a long time ago. And we have to make sure we don't shift back to what really wasn't working for people with diabetes moving forward.
Fantastic. And we are just about closing up. So this will be our final question. We have one coming in that asks, can the panelists please talk about which literature they're most proud of from key ADA journals, Diabetes Care and Diabetes or other journals? And what would they say about the scientific review of social determinants of health by Dr. Felicia Hill-Briggs?
I'll just say, since I quote that paper almost on a daily basis to anyone who will listen, that I was just so thrilled to see the ADA put out a scientific statement on that topic, because we are such a powerful voice. It's actually showing that we actually have to think about the environments in which people live. So we ask our patients to make behavior change, but yet they are living in an environment that is not conducive to engaging in those behavior changes. And so for us to publish that, one of our premier journals, and really to be nationally socializing that, I think is really, really critical to changing the way other organizations think about this. So, now the Endocrine Society is publishing stuff in JCEM, and, everybody's sort of getting on the bandwagon, but I feel like that particular article is really a standout. It'll be one that I think is referenced and quoted for decades, like required reading for, any practitioner who's going into diabetes, because it crosses science, healthcare, care delivery, like every aspect of things. So I'm really proud to see that in our diabetes care.
Yeah, I think historic work, really. I mean,
but living in the standards, right? So I think as long as
yes,
we keep
embedded within the standards, exactly.
To me, it's not just that we put it out and said, read it and you figure it out. It's we put it out and then embedded it into the standards. So to me that you can't get farther along to make it what is really required to be done.
It's made a huge impact. The EMRs now have those questions, and it's definitely being used very widely, as it should be.
We have to ask 2-year-olds whether they smoke cigarettes. So there you go.
We do, and more. But also what we're assessing for, the questions that we're now asking, piggybacking on what Fran just said, but really the questions that we're asking of all of our patients, of all ages, in really getting the better understanding. So it kind of goes back to the, we see you, we hear you, we want to understand you better.
Fantastic. And we have actually one more bonus question to end on, and it is this. So for all of the panelists, what scientific process, I think it meant to say, is most important to panelists? The research on dual and triple agonists, the scientific review of social determinants of health, the data on kidney and heart risk reduction, and so on.
Is that like ABC is an answer?
We're all important.
All of the above.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of the above. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no reason why we should pick
Reason.
one over another. We need to be pursuing, multiple types of research and studies and approaches to try to improve the care for people with diabetes.
I do want to think that one of the other things that telehealth gave us is, more opportunity to really see our patients and their families in their own environment. I can't tell you how many times, one of my patients said, "Oh, you want to see my soccer trophy?" And, here's my little brother. And, it's just an opportunity to be where they are rather than have them only be where we are.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, everyone. And I think I will pass it over to Kelly for some very last words.
I think that, that we would be thrilled, to listen to all of you in community, even for much longer, just being able to see it here and to see the magic and to let us sort of be with you in a meeting and to feel what it's like as you all muse on what is next, whether it is, the standards of care or whether it's how you translate all of the amazing literature that is being done, the research, all of that. It's just, what a fantastic session that it has been to be with you. And of course, thank you again to Insulet and Novo Nordisk and to Abbott, our incredible sponsors, and to remarkable speakers, and to my team here at Close Concerns for being able to propel this learning for us. I think that we will be back very soon on December 15th. We're going to have our next Wild event. We'll be thinking about policy in particular for 2022. And there are still questions coming in, and we're going to save some of those questions for that session, in particular, the one that I just saw about, about what are critical skills for women in diabetes leadership. We're sure seeing some critical skills on view today. So Fran, in particular, thank you very, very much for lending us your friends and network. I've never seen 6 people respond so quickly to say that they would come in and share so much of their knowledge and perspective. And Tracy, we're sending you out, and connected for life. You're hearing this. Tracy Brown on the big board, connected for life, #health equity now.